And I'm with the Real Macaron company, and I'm going to give you a demonstration in a little while on how to make macarons. I am an NHS volunteer responder, and I started volunteering last March when the pandemic began, and I felt I wanted to be involved in the work that needed to be done to help so many people at this time. And I haven't done so much recently because I'm pretty busy working at the moment, but I very much enjoyed doing the check-in and chat and talking to people, sometimes just really quick calls when they've said, yeah, I'm absolutely fine, and somebody called me yesterday, or my sister just dropped in and I don't need any help. Or some of those that tell you your whole life story once you listen for half an hour. And that's also very rewarding. So I've been happy to do that, and pleased to have been able to help in a very small way. And now also very pleased to be here today to be involved with the virtual village hall, which is a wonderful idea. And I hope that everybody's enjoyed the week that has preceded this final, I think, demonstration. So as I say, I'm Gaye Perry, and I am at the Real Macaron company, and I'm going to show you, I do masterclasses, so I'm going to basically give you the demonstration that I normally do for my masterclasses and explain to you how I make them. It's a bit odd because I can't see any of you, and I don't know how many of you are there or if you've made macarons before, but anyway, I'll assume that you all really, really want to know how to make the perfect macaron, and I will give you all the information I can to do that. So macarons are known, they have a bit of a reputation for being difficult, challenging, and I would say very temperamental. Sometimes you can make a macaron and it all goes terribly well, and then the next time you make it, and who knows what went wrong. And a lot of my customers come to me with that problem. They made them the first time, and then all of a sudden they don't work anymore. So I've tried over the time that I've been involved with this to come to a recipe and a methodology that is really very straightforward, and that once you know the recipe and know the methodology and you follow it, it works. And I'm not going to say that it's 100% foolproof, but it's definitely in the high 90s foolproof. And so if you want to give it a go afterwards, I think that the recipe is being made available to you all, and then obviously you can always get in touch with me again. So they are a bit of a challenge, but there's lots of things that are very straightforward. I'm just going to show you, first of all, this is what we're heading towards. So nice smooth macaron with a little foot, that's the fruity bit around the edge, nice cream filling in that one, and pretty colour, or this one's just a nice ivory colour. So that's kind of what we're heading towards making. So what do we need? As far as equipment's concerned, it's all very straightforward. If you do any kind of baking at all, I'm sure you'll have all these, the necessary equipment to hand. So we need something to weigh on, so just electronic scales these days, most people have them, makes life very easy. We do want to be fairly accurate. We don't need to be so precise that if you didn't have these and you only had, or you still had, digital scales, I can't think of the word now, but you know what I mean. Those are also fine. Anything that will weigh within a gram is good. So that's fine. We need a handheld electric whisk. So I think this is really important. I do recommend to all my customers to use this rather than your stand mixer. You'll find that you have a much better result, mainly because you're in control. You're there and you're kind of doing the work, not just leaving it to the machine. And I think this is the answer for when you're particularly just starting out making macarons and you're making small batches. Definitely recommend this. So that's the important thing. One of the other important utensils is your spatula. Spatula that works for you, but you do need a spatula. And mine's sort of semi-rigid, rigid in the middle, and a bit floppy. And some of them are very floppy. It depends what you prefer, but you will need a spatula. The other thing that is useful is a macaron mat. So I like to teach and pipe using the macaron mats, which are silicone, and you can get these online. And you used to be able to get these in Lakeland, but I'm not sure you can right now. But you can get equivalent kind of things online. So a macaron mat is a nice thing to have. It's not essential. If you haven't got a silicone mat, you can use a piece of baking parchment or greaseproof paper for baking, and just put a piece on your tray and either draw the circles on the wrong side of the baking parchment, or perhaps use a template underneath the baking parchment. But either will work. So if you haven't got one of these and you want to try them this afternoon, don't worry. Get a piece of baking parchment, cut it to the size of your tray, and make sure you stick it down with some mixture so that it's really stuck down and doesn't fly up in the oven, and you'll be able to do it also on that. What else do we need? We need a piping bag because we're going to pipe onto that tray. So I've got a great big massive one here which is far too big, so I'm going to cut the top off and I'll show you what I end up with. So I've got my piping bag, which is more than enough for the size of the quantity we're going to make today, which is a 1 egg batch. So even a smaller bag than this, the ones you buy in the supermarkets that are about that size, that would be perfect for a small batch. And then I just use a cup or a mug and I put that into the mug. So I pull the edges over, and in a minute I'll be able to just easily pour my macaron mixture in there, and I won't be bothering about trying to open the neck of the bag. So that's a little tip. And then otherwise we just need a series of bowls. We need a sieve, and just odds and pieces of cutlery. So nothing very important. As far as ingredients are concerned, very, very straightforward. The key ingredient to a good macaron is ground almonds. So this is really essential. Can't make a macaron, in my view, without them. You can't make a nut-free macaron. It's no longer a macaron. And you can make different things using seeds, etc. But a macaron is based on ground almonds, so we need that. And then we also need 2 sugars. So I have caster sugar, and I also have icing sugar. And you'll see in a minute how I use those differently. So the icing sugar and the caster sugar, both required. Can't make a sugar-free macaron, and we'll see in 2 minutes how we do that. And then the other main ingredient is the egg white. So I have in here some egg whites which have separated already from my egg yolk, and they're sitting at room temperature ready for me to use. So do use them at room temperature. And then generally we like to colour our macarons. So I do recommend something like a gel or a paste colour, food colour obviously, not a liquidy one. Macarons don't like liquids, so it's always a good idea, whatever you add to your mixture, to keep it dry or a paste or a gel. So these kinds of things, this is Sugar Flare, but there are Wilton and Squires and other brands as well that you can get in the cook shops and Hobbycraft and Lakeland and places like that. So these are the kinds of things that I suggest you use. So I'm going to start weighing up now, and as I say, I believe that you have access to the recipe, or you will be able to get it. So you don't need to write it all down if that's the case. So first of all, I'm going to weigh in my bowl 40 grams of caster sugar. So 1 bowl, I'm going to put 40 grams. So that was dead on. I've done it a few times. 40 grams of caster sugar in a bowl on its own. And I just put that to the side so as not to get it mixed up with anything else, because we're going to use that in a minute in our egg white, and we don't want anything else contaminating it as such. So then I'm going to weigh my icing sugar. So again, it's 40 grams. So I've got 40 grams of icing sugar, and that is going to be sieved. So it's very important to sieve your icing sugar. Lots of people say to me, oh, I never sieve my icing sugar, but I really recommend it. So do sieve your icing sugar, because otherwise you can get kind of lumps, like crystals of sugar that kind of set hard. So just a quick sieve, and it doesn't take very long, so it's really not a problem. Any sieve will do. Don't worry about the finest mesh. You just want to make sure that it's sieved, no lumps. So that's that. So that's 40 grams of icing sugar, and I sieve that into another bowl. There we go. And then I'm going to take that other bowl back again. Don't need to make any more washing up. And I'm going to weigh 40 grams of ground almonds. So it's really easy to remember. A 1 egg batch is 40, 40, 40. And it, just a second. 40 grams of ground almonds. So put that, I'm going to sieve the ground almonds into my icing sugar. So I'm going to put this down now so you can see what I'm doing. You don't really need to see me so much. So the icing sugar is already sieved in there, and now I'm going to sieve my ground almonds into the icing sugar. So the icing sugar and the ground almonds together make the dry ingredients, I refer to them as. So the dry ingredients are sieved together in a bowl, and then I'll mix them together so that when we add them to our egg white mixture or meringue mixture, they are going in as one rather than two components. Then you're sieving your ground almonds. Do it lightly. I've got a metal sieve here, and you want to do it quite lightly so you're not pressing it and pushing it down, so that which can sort of start to release a bit of oil, and you don't want to do that. You just certainly don't want an oily macaron. So quite lightly, and just get that through the sieve. We're not trying to make this any finer than the grinds already are. We're just making sure there's no big lumps or clumps. And if there are a few bits that are a bit bigger, that's not a problem at all. It adds to the texture of the macaron and does not detract from the smooth surface. So in fact, I'm just going to tip that last lot in. I can see that there's nothing there that's untoward, not too large a crumb. So I'm just going to sieve that. I'm going to tip those last few bits in. And as I say, I'm stirring those together, so I've got a homogeneous as such mixture there, just ready to pour into our mixture in a while. That's that. And then I'm going to take my larger bowl. So you need a larger bowl for doing your egg white. And I'm not going to lie, this bowl is a little large for a 1 egg batch. I could probably make a 3 or 4 egg batch in that quite happily. But it's so I can show you, so that you can see through the Pyrex. But what's good is to have a flat bottom bowl, so a bowl that's got a bit of space in it for you to move your spatula in a minute, and it's not too high-sided so that you're kind of cramped in your style of doing the beating through. So I'm going to weigh this egg. I'm going to head for about 32 grams. So 32 grams is the average weight of a medium egg white. So the egg white from a medium egg. So it'll be around about 32 that I'm looking for. And if it's 31, I'm going to stick there. So if it's 31 or 32, then that would be absolutely fine. You don't want to overdo it, because if you have too much egg white, you have for the ground or for the dry ingredients that we've got here, then it will be too sloppy. So for these dry ingredients, we need about 31 to 33 grams of egg white. So I'm going to just get my salt, which I forgot to put on the table. So a little pinch of salt is going to go in there, a pinch of salt, and then I'm going to whisk. Now obviously it's going to make a noise, so you're not going to be able to hear me speak, so I'll explain what I'm doing. I'm going to whisk the egg white until it's white and frothy. So it won't be for very long, it's about 30 seconds, and it'll just be white and frothy, it won't be yellow liquid anymore. And when I've done that, I will add about half of my caster sugar, so the caster sugar that I weighed out and put aside on its own, about half, and I'm going to whisk that in. The sugar's going to dissolve. I'm going to turn the speed up, and it'll start to get thicker and glossier, and we'll start to hold its shape. When I've done that, I'll add the rest of the sugar, and I'll repeat the process. And I'll explain again as I do it. So here we go. Sorry about the noise. Okay, so you can see, hopefully, that that's just white and frothy. It's still very liquidy. It will still drop out of the bowl if I tip it too much, but it's not yellow liquid. There's a lot of snare bubbles in there already. Now I'm going to add about half of my caster sugar. It doesn't matter, big half, small half, third, whatever you want, but I usually do it in 2 halves, roughly. You don't have to weigh it in 2 halves. Now hopefully you can see there the shape it's holding, shape of the beaters. And so it's starting to look thick, white, glossy, and it's holding its shape. So I'm going to add the rest of the sugar. Don't forget to do that. And then beat that in. So again, you can see that the mixture is nice and thick. I can turn the bowl upside down now and holding its shape. So that's how you want it to be. You can't really over whisk at this point, so whisk a bit more if you're not sure, but that's what you want it to look like. And then I'm going to add my colour. So this is when I add my colour, because I can whisk it in. I can get a really good idea of the colour that it's going to be. So these are good, true colours, and give what you see in the bowl is pretty close to what you're going to get when you baked it. So you can add as little or as much as you like. Really pale, I've got ruby here, a really pale ruby, or which would be pink, or a deeper colour. So I'll just put a blob in, see what happens, and we'll probably just go with it, just to show you. And that's actually quite a big blob, but just to show you that that is possible. You can actually put more in than that even before you start to interfere with the texture and the taste of the macaron. And now I'm going to whisk that in, obviously, so that it's really incorporated through my mixture. So you can see now it's still holding its shape. It's a lovely colour. It's a ruby. There is some white underneath. If I look that way, you can see, but that's fine. In a minute, I will be incorporating that as I fold in my dry ingredients. Pop those out. And then I always just scrape off what's on my beaters. I don't like to waste anything, so just scrape that. And it doesn't matter. I've got some colour on my knife here, but that's fine. I can beat that in as I add the dry ingredients. So I'll just use that all up. And then I'm going to take my very important spatula. I'm so sorry. I'm going to take my spatula and just scrape all that. Just at this point, do resist the temptation to stir this. I'm just checking that I am still live. Thank you, I am. So you want to avoid the temptation to stir this, because if you stir it now, you're going to flatten it, and that's not what you want. You want to make sure that you're basically keeping the air in at this point. So don't stir it. Just leave it as it is. And now we're going to add some dry ingredients. So I'm going to add about half. Again, you don't have to weigh this. So add about half. And then I'm going to fold this in very gently. So I use my spatula, cleaning the edge of the bowl, scraping that right off the edge, and going underneath the mixture, folding it over to really get that very gently incorporated. Feels quite dry. You might think, this isn't going to come together. And that might make you a bit tempted to stir rather than fold, but please don't, because then you're going to ruin your mixture. So just fold it gently and it will come together. If you try and always move it off the side and off the bottom of the bowl, then it won't stick and you won't get a sticky, heavy mixture, which gives you a heavy macaron and is likely to give you cracks. So let's just bring that together. So you can see now that my mixture is in the middle of the bowl. The bowl's quite clean. Got some streaks there from my colour, but that's all right. I'll come together. And I'm going to add the rest. So I'm going to add all of that in one. And I'm going to, again, you can do it in the thirds if you prefer. Just don't overwork it. Just make sure you bring it together, folding it gently. I can cut through if I want to open it. It's a wet surface. And bring it together slowly. And as I say, it will feel dry. And you might think, well, this isn't right. But it is right. That's how it feels. And it's one reason for doing it in 2 halves. Because if you add it all at once, it's really dry. It's quite hard to incorporate it without stirring it. So then, once again, I'm going to scrape off what's on my spatula, get that into the bowl. And I'm going to just scrape that all in. I've got quite a lot of colour here, so we might actually get a bit of a streaky look, which is fine. So I've got all my dry ingredients in there now. In fact, I've got all my ingredients. So the mixture is nicely in the middle of the bowl. And I'm now going to use my spatula a little bit like a paddle. I'm going to paddle through my mixture. And I'm going to turn the bowl so I'm going through the whole of the mixture, being quite consistent in covering the full width of the mixture, if you like, and the depths. And this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go smack it through, smack it through, smack it through. And as I do that, you can see now that the mixture is actually looking quite wet. It's kind of shiny looking and even shinier. And that's what we want. We want that to happen. So we're moving the air through the mixture, smacking out a bit of it, but not stirring it flat. So then I take a big spatula full and I have a look to see how it's flowing. It's starting to flow quite nicely. Bit heavy, bit sluggish. You can see it's still thick, but we're going in the right direction. So I'm going to take that off my spatula again. I scrape it off the spatula just so that everything is getting beaten through. If it's sitting on the spatula, it won't be beaten through, and that will probably give you a cracked macaron. So I'm going to do that again. And then I'm going to bring it back together, and I'm going to show you. Take a big spatula full, hold it close to the bowl, and now you can see it's really flowing, it's pleating, and it's not breaking. And that's how I want it to be. So it's really flowing like well, it's like a ribbon, or people say it's like lava. So it's, but I can see as well that when I pipe it, it will hold, holding its shape. So I'm now going to get that into my piping bag. So that's why I did this, because it makes it a lot easier. This bowl, as I say, is too big and also very heavy. So I find this bit with a heavy bowl quite hard, but it is easier, I promise you, to pour your mixture into your bowl, into your piping bag, sorry, than to try and spoon it from the bowl, which is on the table, if that makes any sense. So I'm just going to get that. Okay. And again, scrape that off. Don't want to waste it. There you go. All of the mixture off the spatula into your piping bag. Now we've got our macaron mat. So I'm going to get rid of that. Get rid of that there. So I've got my mat already. So having got the piping bag set up like this, it's also quite nice. It's quite nice and clean. You can lift it. Not going to get any mixture on the outside of the bag. Lift it out. Give it a bit of a shake, straighten the bag out, and then just clear the neck so that the mixture is going down the bag, not coming out of the wide end. And then I'm going to twist nicely, securely, so that it's really closed. So nice firm twisting, and then I'm going to put that there and rest. So then you get your macaron mat ready, or as I say, baking parchment, if that's what you're going to use, making sure you've got a little bit of your mixture, if you're using baking parchment, to stick the parchment down underneath. And then I didn't say this, but it's obvious now, we don't need a nozzle. So we're just going to cut the end, the tip as such of the bag. So I'm going to, I say usually about 1 centimetre across. That's how it should measure, about 1 centimetre across. Not so tiny that you have to pump it out, and not so big that it's just plopping out and you can't control it. So about here in this case, I'm going to cut that. Mixture will rise, no need to worry, don't panic. Go to your first template And I tend to pipe, holding the bag vertically. I keep still. I'm in the middle of the template. Don't worry about air bubbles, it will all come through. So still, central in the template, quite close to the mat. The mixture flows out. I put a little bit of pressure with my right hand. But it's my right hand that's at the top of the bag. It's not halfway down the bag. And it's my hand rather than my thumb that's pressing on the mixture. So it's sort of in the heel of my hand. So I'm just very gently putting pressure, keeping the piping bag vertical, still in the center of the macaron. And then as I get to the edge of the template, I just do a little swirl away. We'll just do that. I'll show you what not to do. So I don't recommend that you do this. So if you move, you'll tend to, if you do icing generally, you're probably used to moving. So you might ice cakes, cupcakes, or you might do decorative icing, and you'll be used one way or another to moving. But to do a macaron like this, we really don't need to move. You want to stay still, stay central, and just let the mixture flow out and make its own round. So still central. And the other thing you don't want to do is pipe from the outside. So if we went around like that, you get a very uneven coverage. Now, in both of these cases, the mixture is fluid and it will settle. So I know that I can now go back and probably add a bit in the middle, fill this one up, and it'll be okay. But I don't recommend that you do that, because if you put a little bit in each of them and then go back, you're not going to be sure that they're all the same size. You might get little sort of peaks on the top where you added a bit, and you don't want that. So let's just keep going. Still central, vertical piping bag, and just swirling away. And a 1 egg batch will make you somewhere in the region of between 8 and 10 macarons. It depends really on how fluid your macaron mixture is and how you pipe. I tend to make about 9.5, which is always a bit annoying. So that's 9.5 whole macarons. So you'll make somewhere between 16 and 20 half shells. And then just press this down, get this all out. There you go, that's not even the whole one, but it's fine. I'm just putting that in the bin. And then what we do then is we give them a bit of a tap. So I like to just make sure you hold the tray firmly and then just tap it. Give it a bit of a tap on your surface. And what we're doing there is we're making the macaron settle. You may be able to see there, for example, where is it? It's really hard to do this. There's a little bubble, there's a little bubble that's burst. I'm not sure how clearly you can see them, but when you do it, you'll see that the bigger air bubbles will come to the top and they'll burst, or that were at the top, they'll burst, and then they'll just smooth over. And that's it really. That's what we do. Most recipes will tell you to leave your macaron tray. Most recipes will tell you to leave your macaron tray now to let the macarons dry out for about 40 minutes or so. If you do that, you need to do it in an environment that is not humid, so not sort of next to the kettle that's boiling or the washing machine that's steaming away. You can leave them out, but it's not necessary. So if you want to just put them straight in the oven, and I actually recommend that you do that, then they can go straight in the oven. The oven is on at 140 degrees C, so 140. It's a fan oven, and I bake these for 18 minutes. The thing with a macaron is that you can open the oven when they're cooking. So my recommendation is to put the oven at 140 with the fan on and to bake for 18 minutes. But if when you open the oven after 18 minutes, they're not cooked, then you can put them back in. In fact, open the oven at 15 minutes and have a look and see, what they're like when they're not cooked. And then you can put them back in. So that's not a bad thing to do. So I'm going to put these in for 18 minutes. And if I may, I'm going to take another few minutes to explain to you how you know when they're cooked and to tell you a little bit about flavours and fillings. Alexa, give me 18 minutes on the timer.
18 minutes, starting now.
So my timer's on for 18 minutes, and as I say, 140 degrees. So I now let those bake. How do I know when they're cooked? Well, basically, I go open the oven, obviously, and I will just take the edge of a macaron. Let's imagine this one is just half a shell and it's still in the oven. And I'll just take the edge like this and I'll slightly wobble it just to see how firm it is. So when it's cooked, the shell should feel firm. It'll be soft, obviously, because it's warm and it's still in the oven. But you can tell the difference between when it's really wobbly and when it's firm and set as such. And that's when it's cooked. If you're not sure, give it another minute. It won't hurt it. And when you've done a few batches, you'll quickly see what I mean and realise where the ultimate time is, what the ultimate time is for cooking macarons in your oven. But I honestly recommend to do that rather than messing around with the temperature. So I think it's better to cook at a fairly low temperature, 140, rather than put it up and cook them for less time. But if you put it on 140 and then just check after 15, 17, 18 minutes and see how they're cooking. When you get them out of the oven, just leave them to cool. So don't start trying to get them off the mat straight away, and don't do anything different other than you would to cool anything you get out of the oven, cake-wise. Just put it onto a cooling rack and leave for at least half an hour. You need half an hour for them to really cool down and to properly firm up and be firm enough and cool enough for you to take them off the mat. And to do that, if you've got a silicone mat like mine, if they're properly cooked and the mixture hasn't been too sticky, then you will be able to just kind of peel the mat away and lift the macaron off the mat. And the same with the baking parchment. If they're a little bit sticky, don't worry. They may be. Just kind of go gently. Perhaps even get a sort of spatula knife underneath so that you don't leave too much mixture behind. That can happen. And don't be worried if there are a few little air gaps on the undersurface at all. As long as they're not completely hollow, we've done a good job. So that's the oven, and cooling them and taking them off the tray. And then very briefly, I can tell you about flavours and fillings. Most macarons, I'll just quickly tell you that most macarons are not flavoured. So the shell is as we've made them today. So I mean the shell isn't flavoured. And when you buy them from the supermarket or from La Durée or Paul's or wherever you might buy them from, or from me, the shell itself will be coloured, and the flavour, let's say it was raspberry, will come from the filling. Now, there are some things that I think are really worth doing when you are baking your own macarons to flavour the shell. The first one would be chocolate. So I would use cocoa powder to make a really delicious chocolate macaron. And all you need to do is, where we had 40 grams of icing sugar, you can replace 5 grams of the icing sugar with 5 grams of cocoa powder. And then sieve that with your icing sugar, incorporate with your ground almonds, and proceed as we did today. And you don't have to colour those. They will be a chocolatey colour. If you want it to be a little bit more chocolatey and a darker colour, then increase the amount of cocoa powder. I think 7 grams is about the maximum that I would recommend. So 7 grams of cocoa powder and 33 grams of icing sugar. Another thing that you can do is to incorporate another nut. So I did say that ground almonds are the base of good macaron, and that is true. But if you wanted to, for example, incorporate some pistachio nut or some hazelnut or even some desiccated coconut, then you can do that by perhaps reducing your 40 grams of ground almonds to 30 grams and adding 10 grams or including 10 grams of the other nuts. So ground pistachio nuts, ground hazelnuts, or some desiccated coconut, all delicious. And they just slightly change, obviously, the flavour of the macaron and also the texture of the macaron in their own ways. So that's really worth trying. And you can also use things like coffee. You might want to just put a teaspoonful of coffee powder into your icing sugar. You might want to use a teaspoonful of very fine Earl Grey tea in your icing sugar, which is also very nice if you like tea flavours. But if ever you add anything to your macaron mix, just make sure that it's a dry mixture, a dry thing, not lemon juice or coffee essence or anything that's wet, because your macaron mix is not going to like that. And then to fill and flavour your macarons, whether you flavoured the shell or not, I would recommend the two types of fillings that are the most versatile and the easiest really to make as well are chocolate ganache and buttercream based fillings. So chocolate ganache, you can use milk, dark or white chocolate with double cream, making your ganache and then flavouring it. And if you are using, and obviously letting it set before you use it to fill your macaron. And if you are using a buttercream, then obviously you can make a nice batch of buttercream, as much as you need for just the one batch of macarons, or extra for another time. And you can flavour your buttercream. So I usually use twice as much icing sugar as butter, and then I can flavour that with essences or fruit coulis or jams or lemon curds or even fresh fruit. And it's a very versatile filling for a macaron. The chocolates, again, you can use essences, you can use alcohols, again, coulis, fruits, all sorts of things to flavour your chocolate ganache. And then the way you would use that is once it's, well, if it's a chocolate ganache, you need it to set. If it's a buttercream, it's ready as soon as you've made it, which is actually one of the advantages of making a buttercream. So you can just use it straight away. And yeah, I would pipe it. I can't show you that because we won't have time, but it's very straightforward. If you imagine your macaron shell here, obviously what I've done, if you imagine now, I just piped my cream just around, and then I took the top, put the top on and twisted it slightly to spread the cream to the edges. Always hold your macarons by the edges, not here, because if you do that, you're going to put too much pressure probably on your thumb and break through. So just hold them here, slightly twist. These are stuck together now, so I can't even open it to show you. But you can, and if you don't want a pipe, you can also just take your knife and put a blob on the inside the shell, and then take the top and press it down very gently and give it a little twist, and that will make your macaron. So I hope that's been useful. I hope it's been interesting, and I hope that you all heard me. So if, yeah, have a go, see how you get on. I do think you'll have my recipe, and get in touch. Let me know how you get on. It's been nice to do this for the virtual village hall. And I'm going to say to Victoria, I'm done. And I've very much enjoyed that. I hope that's okay. And if there are any questions, I don't know if you can do that, Victoria, I'm happy to take some. I wait to hear what you say.